there's no single path for a young adults nowadays, whether it's college now or college later or gap year. So if you can be open to allowing your young adult to kind of explore what it is that they want to do can be the best path for their young adult.
You're listening to Parenting with Impact, the podcast for parents like you, raising complex kids to become capable, independent adults, even in this complicated world. Each episode brings expert insights and real-life strategies to help you parent with confidence, calm, and clarity. Here are your hosts, Elaine and Diane.
Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation in the Parenting with Impact podcast. My guest today is Joanna Lilley, and we're going to be focused today as young adults, older teens and young adults. And, I don't know how much you know about what we do here at Impact, Joanna, but we have been really supporting parents of young adults very consciously and intentionally for about 5 or so years. Not only did our kids start becoming young adults, but the pandemic really shifted awareness around what was happening in families at that age. And so we run a bunch of groups. We do a lot of work in this arena. We do a summit in the summers. This is something we care a lot about. So I'm really excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. So tell everybody a little bit about, you're a consultant and you work with, I love the way you describe it, that your clients are the young adults and your customers are their parents. Great distinction. So you work with the young adults. Tell us how you came to be doing this work and what is it that you do?
Well, thanks again for having me. I think it all started about 8 years ago, really where the light bulb finally not just went off, but I decided to really take the leap to start my own business. At that point, I'd been working in higher education for 5 years. I had my master's in counseling. I decided I didn't want to be a therapist, but I wanted to figure out how the heck do I marry all of the other previous experiences that I'd had, which was about 5 years prior to going back to grad school. All of that is to say, I always found myself in some sort of kind of therapeutic or supportive work environment. And then also it was just kind of something that I sought out for my own well-being, right? If I could do art activities or continuously learn new things, I was putting myself in situations where I was learning and growing and then also advocating for whatever it was that I needed. But fast forward, I'm working with students in higher education, and this is before the pandemic, right? So I saw the writing on the wall that ended up really just exploding once students ended up kind of learning from home, which was that there was already a little bit of an epidemic taking place. Why am I here? What am I doing? Oh my, just resiliency, advocacy, things that were showing up that it wasn't like, you're not college capable. That wasn't the question. It was, are you college ready, right? Or are you ready to be an adult, to be independent? And kind of, so again, I was enjoying these one-on-one relationships with students, like the rapport building, getting to know them as a human, not just a cog in the wheel of this large system.
Right.
But what I was identifying with them is, why are you here? Right? What is your calling? What are you interested in? Do you have to be a student? Do you really need a college degree to pursue what it is that you want to pursue? So I was having these one-on-one conversations and just realized I'm probably doing a disservice considering my job was in retention in higher education. I was not retaining all these students, though I should say, caveat, my employer never came back to me and said, you're not doing your job. It was just more of this internal moral dilemma. I was hired to do this thing, and I'm finding myself in conflict of said thing. So I knew that.
I want to stop you really quickly because your story is very familiar to you, and it's new to us, right? And so what I just heard you say was that you were working in a job that was about retention, about helping college kids stay in college. And what you realized was that not all of them might have been best served by staying in college. Is that what I really just heard?
Thank you for very succinctly describing what I was doing. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Which we know, and it may be that they weren't intended to be in college at that, or best suited to be in college at that time. It's not that college wasn't the right choice, but maybe the timing was off.
Correct.
Or maybe the reason was off, or so now keep going.
It's all the other things, right? It's the grief, it's the loss, it's the traumas, it's the life outside of the classroom was what was impacting the students. So I still wanted to have these relationships with students, but instead of being the support on campus, I wanted to be the guide as they were transitioning off. Like literally, I'm standing on the edge of the sidewalk, just one step off of campus, saying like, I'm here, right? As you are transitioning out, how can I guide you to figure out where it is that you want to go, what it is that you want to do? And so again, because I have my master's in counseling, inherently, the majority of students at that point that I was working with were in need of more therapeutic resources. Like, hey, I might need to take a break from school. It's not just about stepping away from being a student. It's also about I need emotional and mental health support right now. But that has since expanded. So consulting for 8 years, doing just this one-on-one guiding young people. And it's not just college students. I want to be really clear. Since the pandemic, actually, one of the things that I've seen expanded is more proactive 18-year-olds that are identifying, I'm not really ready to be a student right now. I need to take a break. I need to grow up. I want to like have some fun. And so I'm working with them. And then also just young people that never went to college or aren't going to be going to college ever. They're just young adults trying to figure out kind of their path, but might need some sort of support along their journey towards independence.
So what age group were we talking about here?
All of my clients are over the age of 18. The majority are between the ages of 18 and 25, but I work with clients even upwards of 29. It really just
Got it.
depends on kind of age is but a number. It's more of a what is your need? Am I a fit for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate it so clearly. We talk a lot about emerging adults, and in our community we work with parents of young kids. So we often say it's like 3 to 33 or 4 to 44, like because what's the average and then the range, because sometimes people come home or sometimes they deal with addiction and come back home, or like all kinds of things can influence what impacts young adults who are trying to find a path forward and struggling with it, which is really what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. And what really strikes me in that conversation is, the outside world wants to call them failure to launch kids, which I really object to. And I'm my hunch is that you're going to share that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you see these kids.
Oh, thank you for naming that because that phrase makes me cringe. And
Yeah.
yet unfortunately, that's what a lot of parents and society is still using. And so it's a way to, I wish we could step away. Even failure to thrive, it rubs me wrong because failure is the key word. We're not in a place of failure. It's just we haven't figured out the path. We got to figure that out. And again, it kind of goes to we are butting up against what society thinks is okay, right? And it usually is just like, only a handful of boxes. Are you going to college or are you not? Right? Are you going to a gap program or not? Right? So it's binary.
Yeah. Well, and if you're not, then what are you doing? And are you paying your own way yet by 18 in an
Exactly.
economy that may not be, right?
Which is actually, I had a conversation with somebody the other day and they were like, 25 feels like the old 18. This idea of maybe you're financially independent at that point. Maybe at that point you are, feeling self-supported rather than needing any and irrelevant of finances, right? They're working a job, they've got social networks, they're living in their own apartment, they've got their own routine, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if that's accurate, and I don't even know anecdotally if I would name 25 as the new 18, but I do think that just as a transition into adulthood, emerging adulthood doesn't start at 18, and yet we're still at this place where legally you're an adult, and so there's just this impending, transition point that parents actually, at least that I hear, are fearing. Oh my gosh, 18! It's just a lot's supposed to happen, and it's
Right. And then
irrelevant.
you hit 18 and all of a sudden it's kind of it fizzes. Like
Yeah.
that was what is what was I worried about? But it is interesting because I do see parents that as their kids get into 18, 19, 20 years old, there's, to your point, there's this fear around, well, if I don't make them take responsibility for fill in the blank right now, then they're not going to make it, or I'm being irresponsible, or, there are all kinds of, I'm thinking about a couple in one of my groups who this kid not dropped out, pulled out of college, mid-college experience, and is trying to kind of get back to a place of going back to college. And the parents are all focused on the kid getting a job, whereas the kid is just emotionally trying to get himself ready to be able to go back into community college. And so the expectations are not only off, but completely out of sync with each other.
Mm.
Does that resonate
Yeah,
with you?
it does. Yeah. I mean, again, it is heavy on the expectations, and a lot of that is being pulled from, your immediate environment. And so oftentimes there is a disconnect of what the young adult is doing or wanting to do and what the parents are kind of putting in place. And so I think I tell parents all the time, it's, leaving college or taking a break, totally okay. But not having a plan, and I say plan in quotes because it's like that's really open to interpretation. What is the plan? And it needs to be a collaborative conversation.
Yeah. Well, we're going to come back and talk more about this because, you moved into my soapbox when you start talking about collaborative conversation. And sometimes there's a place before the plan,
Mm.
right? Which is, I suspect, where you spend some time. And so I want to come back to that. We're going to take a quick break, everybody, and we'll be right back.
Do you recognize current ADHD interventions fall short? At Dig Coaching, we have developed a new field of engineering and a new ADHD intervention called cognitive ergonomics from the inside out. To learn more, go to digcoaching.com/impact.
Welcome back, everybody. My guest is Joanna Lilley, and she works with young adults, emerging adults, 18 and better, older, whatever that is. And we're just starting to talk about a disconnect in expectations and the importance of collaborative conversations, which, again, we spend a lot of time working with parents around this arena. The question I want to double click on a little bit is this notion of if they pull out, like take a break from college, you're saying they need to have a plan. And I'm going to question a little bit, is there something that happens before you even get to the plan? Because sometimes they're at a point where they just need to stop and take the break before they can even figure out what's next. So speak to that just a little bit. Tell me what your experience is.
Yeah, I think, well, there's the important piece, and I think that this will resonate with you, is that we've got to have supports for the young adult, and we also have to have supports for the parents, because in this process, it can be really emotionally charged with expectations, whether they're said or unsaid, which obviously breeds the room for resentment once we're under the same roof again. And so in order for us to really live in this place of, kind of harmony with the said plan, like you said, taking a step back, the young adult needs to have somebody to work with them to figure out what it is that what are they working towards, right? And taking a break from school, how do we, again, we're just using that as example. What do we need? What do you need? It's almost like just taking a moment to be really intentional and insightful, having awareness. Why am I taking a break, right? What do I need to do right now? Like you said, do I just need a break, or do I need to jump right into doing XYZ, right? Because that's, sometimes it's important to slow the pace and kind of take the opportunity to speak with somebody that I identify as like a neutral party to kind of process this. But sometimes that could be a therapist, it could be a coach, or it could be someone like me as a consultant, just like having a one-on-one conversation with the young adult to identify before we get to this, opportunity for that collaborative conversation.
So when I was coming along, that was what color is your parachute? Or, there were workshops, books, exercises, there were frameworks to have you kind of ideate and think about what you wanted to do. When you think about creating a dynamic with a young adult, is part of it about kind of pulling back from all of the expectations that they've been going through high school to explore what they care about? What are you doing in that process?
Yeah, it really is giving them the space, and especially when you're saying high school and even college is so high pressured, and
Yeah.
there's just so much go, go, go and in motion. And sometimes we've been we've been scheduled out the moment we wake up till when we go to bed. So sometimes it's just helpful to have kind of an opportunity to explore. And again, I'm saying like get true with yourself of what it is that you really want or need. And so sometimes that, and again, I'm hesitating in this moment. I tell parents I'm not a coach, but because of being trained as a therapist, the number one thing that I drive or strive for in working with a young adult and meeting with a young adult is just connection,
Ooh,
right?
ooh.
And congruence. So sometimes a part of that is me reflecting to them, like, I'm hearing you say that you really want to do, I don't know, transfer schools. But your body language is really telling me that you're not on board with that. Like, what's really going on? But I say
Yeah.
all this, and again, I'm not like diving into the weeds of doing therapy with them. Like, let's get to the root of what's going on. And I'm also not solution focused in like, let's just jump straight into goals. Like, what do you need to, it is merely a connection to really get them that's, again, non-judgmental, objective party that can just be a resource for them to like a safe space to kind of talk through what do you want to do.
Well, so, what this brings up for me, and I think you and I could probably talk for hours about it, but what this brings up for me is what do you think parents of these young adults need to understand that they often don't before you meet them? It's
Before I
like,
meet,
here's your soapbox. Like, what do parents of emerging adults who are not like driving forward on a path, who are in some way struggling on that path or unclear about the path, what do they need to understand?
I think that for parents specifically, even though I work with young adults for a short amount of time, 3 months or 6 months, and I do that because it's digestible for the young adult. Now, here's how it relates to the parents. They look at that timeline as the customer and they say, we have clear expectations for what we're hoping that you will achieve with our young adult during that time. And every young adult is different. Their needs are rapport building, like establishing, even like being on the path leading to where it is that they want to go. Sometimes for parents that are really analytical, my work is too ambiguous. And so it just feels like a misalignment there of their expectations of what it is, again, that I'll be able to co-produce with their young adult. And so sometimes my work is hearing them express those frustrations or expectations, and then me kind of sharing why they may not be met based on what is happening for their young adult.
So I want to pull this out of the context of your the relationship with that parent, and pull to a larger, like you've done a lot of work with this population over a period of time that's been a particularly interesting period of time historically speaking. Like, what are parents not getting that their young adults see so clearly, or might be seeing clearly, that the parents don't see?
That is such a good question because I could probably rattle off a bunch of different things. I think the one
So I
thing
won't hold you accountable to being right with this answer. But I'm
Thank
curious,
you.
like, what comes up, right? Because
Yeah.
you're right, it could be a lot of things.
I think that honestly, it goes back to the comment that I made earlier about the 25 is the new 18. I still think we're a little bit, I don't want to say archaic or outdated in this emerging adult transition. I think parent perspective of this emerging adult timeline is reflective of their emerging adult timeline. And right now, we're just dealing with young adults. We'll call them teens, right? Because that's really what we're talking about.
Mm.
We're dealing with young people that are just developmentally not as independent as our previous generations. And so we're just dealing with like a longer adolescent period.
Why do you think that is? It's a really,
My
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just
Yeah,
fascinated to hear you say it.
I think it has to do with technology. I just think it has to do with the fact that we are so socially disconnected from each other that we are slower to make friends. We're slower to be excited for new experiences that put themselves in places. or situations that just challenge them. I'm saying that for young adults, right? We've been behind a screen for definitely our entire academic timeline for
Yeah.
young adults right now that are graduating. So I just think that, and it's the double-edged sword, right? Like it was what advanced us in other ways, but it also has kind of regressed our emerging adult population in other. And so I think that's, parents look at tech as like, well, I started using tech maybe when I was in my 20s or, whatever. But the reality is these young people have been
All of their lives.
their entire life. So
Yeah. I'll put some episodes in the show notes that we did to talk about tech use because my youngest is 24 and he said to me, Mom, there's not a kid my age who hasn't been traumatized by the internet. And so we really started doing more conversations and paying attention to that differently. But I think what you're saying is so interesting because, in our world, this audience that we're speaking to right now are parents of complex kids who struggle with some aspect of life, learning, behavior, social, emotional issues. And so that makes them developmentally about 3 to 5 years behind their peers in some aspects of their development, but not all. Okay. So there is a developmental delay already in neurodiverse kids. What you're speaking to is that additional layer that's happening from societal changes that have these kids be, on the one hand, more independent. They have their own news sources, their own information. They don't get news they don't get information from parents the way they used to. So on the one hand, they're more independent. But on the other hand, what you're describing is that they are developmentally, in some ways, less ready to be independent in the world that we're now living in with the expectations of it that come with it.
Yep.
It's quite an irony, isn't it?
Yep. I look at, what is available to young adults as they turn 18 and are quote unquote supposed to move out of the home. And I would struggle right now if I were in their shoes. And so I just have so much empathy for the young adults that I end up working with because it's a hard world to be in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. All right. We're going to have to bring this conversation to a pause, but we'll circle back in a second. Everybody, our guest is Joanna Lilley, and she has a consulting firm that works with young adults to help them find their path, basically, moving forward in the complex, struggling world that we find ourselves in today. You can find out more about her at Lilley Consulting. That's Lilley. LilleyConsulting.com. And she also has a podcast called Success is Subjective, where she really highlights nonlinear stories and alternative paths to achieve adulthood. So I am excited to find out more about that. Joanna, as we wrap this conversation, is there something we haven't talked about that you want to make sure you share with our parents? Or alternatively, is there something we did share that you want to highlight before we wrap?
I think this is kind of a hybrid. It is a highlight, but it's also me saying it a little bit differently. I think there's no single path for a young adults nowadays. So if any parent listening could hear that, right? Whether it's college now or college later or gap year or whatever, there's no single path for young adults nowadays. And so if you can be open to allowing your young adult to kind of explore what it is that they want to do and figure it out, I think sometimes creating that path, whether it's, piecing things together, can be the best path for their young adult.
Beautiful. Love that. Thank you. There is no single path for young adults nowadays. And there was a time in the world where there was, I guess, but there certainly isn't now.
Yeah.
So true.
We've moved away from it for sure.
Yeah. So before we wrap, do you have a favorite quote or motto that you want to share?
You know what? I have it right behind me on my desk, so I see it all the time. Comparison is the thief of joy. I think that honestly still resonates with exactly what it is that we just talked about for parents and for young people, and as it relates to technology.
Yeah. Yeah. On so many levels. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, Joanna, thank you. Thanks for bringing your wisdom. I love what you're doing, so thanks for doing it because I know that there's so many kids out there, young adults, So many people out there who really would benefit and who really, this conversation about let's look at this population from a different lens is so important. Let's look at it in terms of not what do we expect from them, but how can we support them? So I think
Thanks.
that's really beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate it. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So to those of you listening, check in with yourself for a minute. What are you taking away from this conversation? What's your insight? What's your awareness? What's your aha? What are you thinking about now that you weren't thinking about half hour ago? And maybe how do you want to bring that insight forward with you into your life this week? Is there some way you want to apply this awareness? Is there a conversation you want to have with a partner, with one of your kids? Like, what do you want to do with this insight as you move forward? And as always, friends, thank you for what you're doing for yourself, for your kids. Your engagement in conversations and consciously thinking about how to be in relationship with them and how to support them in a way that works for them, that's what makes the difference. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
You've been listening to the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine and Diane. For more information on the Impact Parents community or to join Sanity School for Parents, please visit impactparents.com. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with friends who need similar guidance and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.